If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Golf Talk Live this Thursday, February 19th of 2015. Thanks for stopping by and joining me this evening on the program. We've got a great show for you tonight. We've got a very special guest, Mr. Gary Brooks, is going to be joining me here in just a few moments. But let me remind you, everybody, that we are live every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can get to the show. Easiest way is to go to blogtalkradio.com, and just up in the search key, you can type in Golf Talk Live, and that will bring you to the main site, and you can listen to the program from there. Or if you want, if you're tuning in through your iPhone, you can also go to iTunes. It's available for download through iTunes as well, and also at Stitcher.com. I'm, of course, your host, Ted Odorico, and I'm here every Thursday night with you, and I appreciate you, again, stopping by. And we've got a great show, as I said. My guest coming up here in just a few moments is Gary Brooks. He's a PGA teacher professional, and as well as the owner of G.A. Brooks Golf Company, and he's also the inventor of the straight arm. We're going to talk to him a little bit about everything tonight, about golf, about the straight arm, and a little bit about what he sees the direction that the golf industry is going in. We're going to talk about a lot of different things. But, again, I appreciate everybody stopping by and tuning into the program. Also, if you are interested in calling in and speaking to either myself or any of the guests throughout the show, you can do so by calling in area code 646-716-4667. That number, again, is 646-716-4667. Or if you have any questions or comments during the broadcast, you can certainly email me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And also for those of you in the golf business, whether you're a teacher professional or maybe you're an entrepreneur and you've got a great product that you want to share with the listeners and fellow competitors in the golf business, you can certainly email me there as well at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com, and we'll see about getting you on the program. Just to let you know, right now I'm booked up through until about the end of April, so the dates are moving pretty quick. So if you're interested in coming on, you need to get a hold of me right away, and I will see what I can do about getting you on as early as possible. Also, you can follow on social media. If you go to Facebook, you can type in Golf Talk Live blog. Make sure you have blog on the end. And while you're visiting the page, make sure you throw a few likes my way as well. Always appreciate that. And always keep the show updated on that Facebook page, so as well as my own personal page. You can certainly find updates on the show as well. Also, if you want to follow on Twitter, also update the program on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is Ted and Buck CEO. That's CEO in capital letters. And thanks again to all of the recent followers here since last week. Appreciate all the new followers as well. And I'm also on Instagram, throwing a few photos up on Instagram. You can connect with me there. It's Ted J. Odorico. My last name is spelled Odorico. But as I said, thank you for joining me this evening, and we'll just wait a moment or two, and I think Gary's going to be with us here just any moment. So let me just read a few things about Gary, and then I'll bring him on the show. As I said, my special guest tonight is Gary Brooks. He's a PGA teacher professional, and he's the owner of GA Brooks Golf Company, and also the inventor of the straight arm. Gary began his teaching career as an assistant golf professional in 1979, so he's been with us for a long time. Certainly knowledgeable of the swing has increased when he had the opportunity to work with one of the Golf Digest top 100 teachers, Mr. Ed Oldfield. Through the years, Gary was always trying to find different ways to improve student swing, as we all have, and felt if his students could repeat the positions they learned during their lesson, they could be more consistent and enjoy playing golf a lot more, and we certainly want to encourage that. As golf teaching aids became more popular with the average golfer, they also became wonderful tools for those in the teacher profession. With a variety of teaching aids on the market, students quickly learned that feeling the correct swing fundamentals did improve their swings. And in 1990, Gary experimented with many of his own prototypes of the teaching aids and believed would help with his students. And of course, the straight arm was born. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But in the meantime, let me bring on Mr. Gary Brooks. Gary, welcome to Golf Talk Live.
Hi, Ted. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Not a problem. I appreciate you joining me this evening, and we got lots to talk about, Gary. We got all the time we need here, so we're going to do a lot of great things here tonight. But let me start off. I told a little bit about you, but why don't we start off, Gary, and just maybe let the listeners in a little bit more information about how you got started, when you got started in golf, and sort of what led you to become a teacher professional.
Like most young boys, my father played a lot of golf, and I kind of looked at him, and I wanted to do what he was doing, and he would kind of drag me around the golf course. And, I was about 8 years old or so, and just hitting little shots here and there. And anybody who's played golf and found out that competitive, challenging side of it, didn't take long for me to get hooked and get addicted. And when you make a 7 on a hole, you want to make a 6, and then when you make a 6, you want to make a 5. So it was one of those things that just got me extremely addicted to always to better myself, to challenge myself, and to find out how good can I get.
Yeah, and that's pretty much I sort of follow suit. My father, brought me along when I was about a little earlier than that, but probably my recollection would be around 6-7 years of age, and we actually got out on the course after hitting some balls on the range for a number of sessions, but once he felt I was safe enough to take out in the golf course, away we went. But now I mentioned just in a little bit in the opening comments there that we'll talk about him a little bit later, but that you obviously were taught a lot from Ed Oldfield, who was a top teacher professional as well. We'll let you talk about that as well. But you also played some golf on some of the mini tours, I believe, out in California. Do you have any good stories that you might want to share?
Oh, I tell you, that was quite the experience. Kind of worked 1 year in the business and kind of got in my head, hey, I could probably play the tour. So went out to California and got lucky and stayed in San Diego, right around La Jolla area, and didn't realize it. And being a young guy, and my passion and my vision was just to play golf, I ended up hitting a lot of golf balls over at the University of San Diego. And they just had a huge open field, and like anybody else, you brought your own range balls, and you just hit into this open field. And like everybody else that was at my age trying to say, okay, we can play the PGA Tour, started kind of be friendly, and all of a sudden we realized that tour players were going there. There was a number of tour players back in the early 80s, the Craig Statlers and Gene Littlers and Scott Simpsons and Jack Renners, who would hit golf balls there. And, of course, all of our eyes just went crazy because we knew who these guys were, and we'd watch them, and then we'd ask them questions. Gene Littler would always pull up. He loved classic cars. He would always pull up in a classic car. And back in those days, he would hit brand new Titleist range balls out into the field, and he would just get in his car and leave. And of course, all of us, brand new Titleist, we run out there and get there. But I tell you, one of the things that we learned from these guys was just the consistency. There wasn't a lot of overpowering it. Is that they just did the exact same swing every time. Jack Renner was famous for going into the trees, and we'd watch him, and we'd say, Jack, what are you hitting balls out of the trees for? And he said, I'm working on my flight. And he says, the tree tells me immediately that the flight is exactly like I have it. So we'd watch him in there for hours, and he would hit a ball, like he'd pick branches out and hit a ball 6 feet off the ground consistently. And it was eye-opening to watch that, to watch the players that actually played for a living, played for money, how they practiced compared to us who just kind of were out there on the golf course just trying to shoot a little score. So that was quite the eye-opener at that point. So that was fun.
And that raises a really interesting point. When you look at the golfers today, and a lot of it's, I think, the equipment and of course the balls and that, but it just seems that a lot of the players of that era, the Gene Littlers, as you said, Jack Renner, and some of the other ones that were out there, Statler, they tend to be more shot makers. I think they had to invent a lot of different types of shots to be able to play, because obviously you're not always going to hit it straight every single time. And today it's a little bit different. I mean, they're certainly hitting the ball straight, but you don't see it as many real shot makers in the game today as you did then, do you?
No, you don't. It seems to be more of a power game now.
Yeah.
And of course Nicklaus and Palmer were known for the power game, but nowadays, very seldom, Luke Donald wouldn't be considered a power player, but he hits it a long way. But you pick out your Bubba Watsons and your J.B. Holmes and a number of those guys, and they just hit it as hard as they possibly can. And the equipment that's the way it's made today. But back in the days, those guys were shot makers. They flighted the ball. They did everything to keep the ball under control and hit it in certain spots all the time, compared to just hit it and let's go out and find it and see where it's at.
Yeah, exactly. And Gary, we're going to talk. We're going to expand a little bit more on that. But I see we got somebody very eagerly waiting to come online and join us here. So let's bring our special guest out here. Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. You're on with Gary Brooks.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Who do we have the pleasure of joining us this evening?
I'm Alex Rydell, one of Gary's students.
Oh, well, Alex, how are you?
I'm doing great.
Alex, do you have a story that you want to share with us?
Well, I wrote down earlier today how I started playing golf.
Okay, go ahead and share that with us.
So I remember I was 9 years old, and it was in the summertime, and I was at my uncle's house, and me and my cousin, we were just always outside because it was such nice weather. And I remember we were playing basketball, and we looked at my uncle's golf clubs, and we're like, what are those things? So I remember we just took out a wiffle ball out of his bag, and we just started hitting him in the backyard. And when he came out, he's like, all right, both of you guys hit one. And then when I hit one, he called my dad right away and said, we got to get this guy to play. And my dad was just laughing at him.
Well, I think that's how most young men at that age start, Alex, and that's fantastic. So you worked some with Gary, obviously. What were some of the things that Gary helped you? What areas of the golf game, did he help you with the most, do you think?
He's helped me a lot with my coaching, my mental coach. We work on that almost every lesson, and I think it's just actually made me a really stronger player, and it's helped me a lot on the course.
So would you say that he's helped you to understand that it's not just about hitting great shots, but it's about how to manage yourself when you get out in the golf course? Would that be pretty accurate?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
Yeah, Alex is one of those very, very talented, very coordinated, both hands, very much. So we work a lot on, he's able to hit the golf ball very solid. And the side of it I try to work with him a lot on is just to understand, as you know, with the golf course is kind of, up and down and the terrain always changes, that when he understands he can coach himself well because of his physical talent and choosing the right club and choosing the right shot at the right time, as you know, Ted, and PJ, it's not always a full swing. And
right.
Sometimes you have to, as we just talked about previously, the shot making. And I'm trying to teach Alex that it's not pulling out one club and then taking a full swing. You have to understand, what you're trying to accomplish. So, and he's been very, very successful at that.
Well, that's fantastic. Alex, let me ask you another question, if I may. Obviously, we all have strengths and weaknesses in our golf game. What do you think, what is your strong area? Is it the long game, the power game, if you will, or is it the short game? What's your strongest part of your game, do you think?
Well, when I started, my long game was definitely my best. And then now that I've gotten older and stronger, it's kind of hard to control. So I've been working a lot on my short game. So I think maybe my putting is my best part of the game right now.
That's fantastic. So, and I think if I heard you correctly, you said you're 13 now. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So what future plans do you have? Is it something that you want to play? Obviously, you want to play recreational, but do you have aspirations of maybe playing a little bit later on on a school team, like in college or high school team? Do you have interest in doing that, or are you currently doing something like that now?
This is my 8th grade year, and then after I graduate, we have summer tryouts, and I'm trying to get on varsity, and I hope to get a scholarship and go to college from there.
Well, fantastic, and I'm sure if you continue to work with Gary, I think that's going to work out very well. And congratulations, Alex, to you for getting out there. It's great to see a young man like yourself out there doing something outside as opposed to sitting inside playing a video game, which a lot of the youngsters are doing. So I'm glad that you're able to do that, and it was good that you snuck into your dad's golf bag a few years back and did that. But Gary, let me just ask you real quick here before we let Alex go, and then we'll continue on. What do you think? What do you see in Alex's game that you most want to improve on, and what do you think you just want to sort of leave alone and say, okay, we're going to keep practicing that, but we're not going to mess with that because that's just perfect the way it is over here?
So Alex has a lot of great fundamentals. A lot of things we work on is trying to keep the right leg stable. He tends to, like most young golfers, when you lose that stability of that right leg and it kind of sways to the outside, you know, as you know, it causes a little havoc. So if we can maintain, and Alex has heard the right leg lesson often, and as soon as I kind of put him on video and I show him, you can see the look in his eyes, and his eyes close, and he goes, I knew that was probably the problem. But when Alex keeps his right leg and we develop a great back angle to load up on that right side, he really can come through the golf ball. He's got great shaft angle, hand position coming in, down the line. He's got very square shoulders. So we've worked on a lot of, locking in certain positions to make it more of a habit swing more than Alex hitting the first tee and then going through like a 13 checklist page and everybody's saying, well, gee, Alex, you got to hit the golf ball. So he's really getting to be familiar to kind of piecing his swing together. So I always try to teach to have a purpose. When you're going to hit balls on the range, have a purpose. Don't just go out there to hit golf balls. And he's very, very strong on getting the mental side of understanding and going through a checklist on the range of what he needs to be working on and staying nice and solid with.
Fantastic. Alex, I'm gonna ask you one final question here, and then we're going to let you go, and Gary and I are going to continue on. Have you had a hole-in-one yet?
No, I haven't, but I actually have on the mini golf. I have a lot of hole-in-ones on that, but not on the course yet.
Well, Alex, you keep going out and practicing, and you listen to your coach Gary here, and I'm quite certain before too long, maybe in time for you to make it on that varsity team, you'll get your first hole-in-one. But Alex, I want to thank you very much for calling in tonight, and I hope you'll continue listening to the rest of the program.
Oh, I will. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very
Alex,
welcome.
Thank you, and I'll see you on Sunday for our lesson.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
All right, thanks, Alex.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, well that's fantastic. I love hearing young guys like young boys like Alex that are just eager, that want to get out there, and as I said, there's so many distractions now for a lot of these younger players, and it's great that he had found that passion early and wants to pursue that, and whether he has aspirations down the road of ever becoming a tour player, maybe he wants to do something in the teaching side, or maybe he just wants to play for fun. But he's getting some good building blocks now, and I like the fact that one of the first things out of his mouth was that he's focusing on the mental side of the game, not just going out there and hitting balls. That's very, very important in this day and age. But let's go back very quickly about shot making. And then we'll move forward here. There's so many players in today's game. Tiger's certainly one. Phil is another. There are some. You may not classify them quite as shot makers compared to some of the earlier players, but they are still able to maneuver the ball in ways that a lot of the traditional golf going on right now does. Why do you think? Do you think it's primarily the equipment is allotted, or is it just that it's not something that a lot of the players focus on?
I don't think it's a lot they focus on. I think in Tiger's early career, as we all know, he used to pull out that 2-iron and hit that little stinger shot. And I think Tiger's kind of got away from the shot making and seems to be more about the power. And I think we watched him when he hit the tour in '97, and from '97 to 2001 or so, he would hit a lot of 3-woods off the tee. He would hit a lot of 2-irons, and he would carve shots left and right. And I don't know, Ted, if you see something different, but I just don't. When he plays, I don't see that anymore. I think he's kind of fallen into the ranks with a lot of just standard tour players and doesn't have that edge that he had. Phil, as we know, loves to do those dramatic, passionate, highlight reel types of shots. So he's still like that shot making. But Tiger, I don't see that out of him as he did in his early career.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of it too is, and as we touched on, you and I, Gary, on the phone there this past week, we talked a little bit about Tiger Woods, and one of the things that we mentioned was the fact that really his mental side, I think, is really the area that he needs to focus the most on right now. I think he certainly still hits a great ball, and I think all these swing changes, I think, is just something that a lot of these high-level players tend to do. When they lack confidence, they feel like, well, that's the first sort of angle that we have to attack is let's reinvent the swing. And a lot of times that's not necessary. But, I think he's going to find his groove. Whether or not he, surpasses Jack, that remains to be seen. But, certainly wish him the best. But, yeah, I agree. I don't see him hitting some of the shots he did earlier on in his career.
Yeah, as most of these tour players right now, they're hitting at 300 in the air, and depending on what the conditions are and where the golf course is, they're hitting it at 340. And you see a lot of these guys on these par fives that are 600 yards. They're hitting driver, and then they're hitting an iron into these things. So distance is not a factor for truly most of these guys, the top 50 players. Actually, probably every player, because as you know, number 300 in the world ranking in the past has also come up and won a golf tournament. So these guys all on tour are geared for power, but I think if they learned and executed more shot making, they would probably, better their score or obviously their wins coming in. But they seem to be this like even like the waste management when they were, the 18th hole, which is not that long, and they're all hitting it with like 100 yards. And, you wonder they don't have the control at 100 than they do, maybe at 120 or 130 or so, especially for greens that they have at that point. So, but they want to just power it out there. They love when the crowd screams and yells.
Yeah, and you know what? I actually enjoyed golf more. I certainly and still enjoy watching it, but I think I enjoyed it more 20 years ago than I do now, and simply for the fact that it was interesting to watch some of these guys. It was interesting to watch guys like Trevino and Chichi Rodriguez and some of these others, come up with some of these different shots, and you almost, you certainly don't want to see somebody. You don't want to wish a bad shot on anybody, but sometimes you wish. Once in a while that somebody would hit one into the woods and see how they're going to recover from it, because it just, to me, hitting it in the center of the fairway every shot after shot, it gets old after a while. And I know it sounds kind of crazy because that's the agenda that they want to do is hit them and get it in play. But sometimes it makes it interesting to see, when Tiger would spray one into the woods and then you'd see him pull off some sort of a miraculous shot, Phil the same way. And Luke Donald is not he's a great guy and hits a phenomenal golf shot, but he's not certainly one of the most exciting golfers to watch.
Well, you look at Arnold Palmer's career. He made a career out of being next to everybody in the crowd. I mean, that's what made, he's shaking hands and high fiving people and whatever. I mean, I think that was a big part of his charisma, was he was able to go in the crowd, move the people, talk to them, probably ask them what kind of a shot should I hit here, and became a fan favorite for hitting them in the crowd and then pulling off those shots.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder if that was a PR move on his part or not, because it certainly got, it earned him the title of the king for a reason. Gary, we heard from Alex talk a little bit about some of the things that you're helping him with, and obviously at some point you had to have help along the way, and we mentioned earlier on in the beginning of the program that Ed Oldfield, of course, taught you, and as well as many other prominent players out there. What were some of the things that you learned from Ed when you were up and coming?
I tell you, and that was still when I was very young, and as a young guy, you're just trying to hit it hard. And I will say, because he was kind of like the guru of the LPGA Tour, and watching him teach, some of the great players back then, the Betsy Kings, the Jan Stevensons, and the Ellis Millers, and what have you, is that it was all about consistency. It was all about understanding, where the leg positions, where the arm positions, the shoulder positions, because you had to kind of, they were, for the girls, it wasn't a power game for them. So they really needed to understand. So he taught more of, independent body motions and body positions. So when things, and we all, even the best players in the world get goofy, crazy shots. And I always learned, I learned from Ed that, if you're driving down the road and you're starting to feel a little thump, 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 you don't just start grasping at straws and say, geez, what if I change my windshield wipers? Will that make the thump go away? Or if I put more, fluid in the radiator thing. So Ed was very good at watching the girls hitting shots, and then he would quiz them. Okay, why'd that shot go to the right? Why'd it go low? Why'd it go high? Where was your right arm? Where was your left arm? Where was your ball position? What was the angle of attack? So it was all about, the result gave you feedback for what the body did. So if you can control the body, you can control the result. So I learned very early with Ed that it was all about, if the body did X, Y, Z, then the golf ball, you're going to have pretty much the result that you anticipated prior to striking the ball.
Yeah, and that raises another interesting point, and I'm going to talk about that here in just a minute. But of today's instructors and how the game is being taught, and with technology and that, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But I want to ask you one other thing first before we move on to that. You obviously, Alex is a good example in that you've obviously taught a number of juniors. What are some of the things that you think that as instructors that we need to be mindful when we're working with juniors? What do we really need to first and foremost make sure that we're doing when starting out with some of these youngsters?
I think it's just, a lot of it is course management. I've done a number of junior, tournaments and watching these kids play. And as you know, that there's on a golf course, besides the terrain is always wavy. There's trees and there's sand and there's out of bounds and then there's water and stuff. So, the course management part of it, I think, is very important. That, if there's sand around every green, which most of them are, and you're not feeling confident from 150 yards out that your 7-iron or whatever you happen to be hitting from 150, that you're going to be able to get it in that, we'll just say, that little 10-yard area. I teach them, right now, let's hit one club shorter, and then take it out, and then chip onto the green, and try to get the one putt or the two putt. And it's more or less not for their score that they need to score today, but it's giving them options that when they're in the fairway, and there's water or sand around the green, and they're not feeling confident, that they can take a less club, execute it, and if they feel confident with their short game and with their putting, chipping and putting, then guess what? It'd be the same getting on the green and two putting. And I think if golfers understand they have more options, more than saying, okay, I have a 7-iron, hit this 150, I'm 150 out, this is the only shot I can hit. And again, it gets back to what you and I were talking about. It's a shot making.
Yep.
Maybe there's a time, as you know, and you and I have both played some long par threes that are 230, 240 yards.
Yeah.
And you're trying to hit driver, you're trying to hit 3-wood into these things, and they're surrounded by hazards. Would it make sense to maybe hit a 6-iron off the tee and then maybe hit like a little 56 sand wedge into the green and then go for your 1 putt? If you don't, you walk away with a 4, saying that's not too bad for a 230-yard par 3.
Well, and that's a lot of times what I try to do too now on some of these long par 3s, because depending on where you play, some of the courses, if they're not surrounded by bunkers, there's usually a lake or something or a pond nearby. So there's usually all kinds of trouble, and I know you don't want to focus on the trouble, but you also have to be realistic, and sometimes you almost have to look out for a bailout area, if you will, and which is kind of what you're talking about, and just say, okay, let's not try to force it in one shot. Let's, as you say, it's sort of, I don't really like to say so much that it's a layup, but I like to find a position just a little bit maybe short, allow myself a better attack, if you will, because sometimes these par 3s, as I said, and as you've mentioned, they just, especially on some of these newer courses, the resorts and that, they want to make it look good, and they want to make it look like it's, right out of, a top magazine. And a lot of times for the average golfer, they're not going to make it. They're not going to get, even some of the pros have a difficult time.
Yeah, I try to teach, every golfer that I teach at all levels and at all ages, just to try to play within your level, meaning that if and I'll take somebody who we'll say maybe shoots like 100 or so, and I'll stand them on that tee box. I say, okay, you're going to hit a driver here. What are the chances of you getting on that green with a driver? And very slim. But I said, what if you hit a 6-iron, which you're going to be pretty much in that range of, having a second shot to the green.
Yeah.
You're going to have a better chance of getting on the green in 2 than if you hit in the bunker. And typically somebody who shoots 100, they're not very good bunker players. And, and as you know, they're trying to hit the ball harder to get there. Now they've either duck hooked it or they've hit a big old slice. And so now they're punching from a tree, and then they knock into the bunker, and now they can't get out of the bunker. And before you know it, as we all see, that's where the 6s and the 7s and the 8s come on. I said, you know what? If you played short of the problem and worked on your short game, I mean, as you know, Ted, anybody can learn, a 60-yard shot and in. You don't have to be a tour player to be good at that point. You got to be a tour player to hit a 230-yard par 3 often and hit it close to the pin. So I try to teach them to play within their level. If you can be a great short game, wedge, sand wedge, 56, 60, whatever you like to hit, I said, you can be deadly out there. And then you're going to be, walking away with a 4. I said, chances are walking away with a 4 on that kind of a hole every time somebody shoots 100, they're going to bring their score down quite a bit.
It, again, goes back to what we talked about there with Alex. It builds that confidence. When you know that when you come up to a challenging hole like that, rather than maybe looking at a double or even a triple bogey, knowing that you can play the smart, as you say, implement course management and play the smarter shot and come out of there in most times a 4, and occasionally, if you're lucky, you might even get a 3 and par the hole. It shocks me sometimes when I see when I go out, and a lot of times I'll play by myself and I'll watch people in front, and what I'll see these guys, like you said, they'll pull out their driver, and I've watched them for several holes before they get to this hole. So I know they're not very good, and I'll see them try to go for this green with their driver, and it's just all over the place. And I'll talk to them later, and they've walked away with a 6 or a 7 or even an 8 in some cases. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, much like you, why not play the smarter shot and take a 6 or 7, depending on what it is, and play it safe and give yourself a chance. Even a bogey is better than a triple bogey.
Well, if we'll say that somebody hits a 150-yard shot off the tee and whatever they want to use, that's going to leave them basically 80 yards into the green. And everybody who plays golf, to even Alex at 13, they're going to hit an 80-yard shot. And if you would practice that at the range, saying, okay, my course management is I'm going to play this golf course this afternoon, and they have 1 or 2 long par 3s, so I'm going to hit this kind of a shot, and then I'm going to pretty be left with either 50 to 60 to 70 yards, and then work on that shot. So when you are confronted with that shot, you're ready for it. And chances are, even if you hit it short again, chances are you're going to be close enough that you can either putt it up or, take a little 5-iron and just kind of nudge it up to the green and take your one. I think most guys on a par 3 that long, if they have options of making 3 or 4 or 5, and probably worst case 5, they're going to say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to walk away a little, defeated if I made a 3, 4, or 5 on this hole. This hole's tough.
Yeah, and you see a lot of some of your older golfers that you see out there now, especially down here in Florida. I see when the snowbirds come down, a lot of them will play more like that. They know they can't hit as far as they once did, so they start playing smarter. And, it's a shame that we're not teaching some of the younger golfers to play more like that, to play smarter. And that was, like I said, it was very impressive to hear Alex say right from the beginning that, he's really focusing on the mental side of things, because a lot of times, especially a youngster like him gets up there and they see somebody like a John Daly or some of these other ones out there that are just belting, a Bubba Watson belting at a mile, and right away in their psyche they're thinking, okay, I want to hit it 300 yards too. So and that's fun and it's great, but if you're shooting 100 plus all the time, suddenly golf doesn't become fun anymore. Hitting 300 yards, if you're able to do that at some point, is great on the range, but it doesn't do you a lot on the course if you can't put the rest of the game together to shoot some low scores. So,
I tell you, one of the tough things I always try to teach everybody, all my students, golf is very unique in the sense that if you and I, Ted, are playing on basketball teams, and I'm going to throw you a pass, you happen to miss it. Well, it's just out of bounds, and then the other team gets it, and they bring it back in. Well, in golf, if I hit one out of bounds, I'm going to pay a penalty for that. And as you know from playing golf, this weighs on you. And all of a sudden you say, geez, I played this golf course 3 days ago, and I sliced it so bad I went out of bounds. That cost me 2 shots. I ended up making an 8 on the hole. And then all of a sudden the lack of confidence comes in. So in other sports, you're not penalized as you are in golf. You hit one in the water. Right. It's another stroke penalty. We have 14 clubs that we need to be mediocre at all of them. We just can't use 1 or 2 or 3 clubs around the whole golf course. But, basketball, there's 1 ball. Football, there's 1 ball. Baseball, tennis. So everybody uses the same thing. But in golf, part is that, you've got to be good at all the clubs to play some reasonable types of games. So that's why I try to teach, the course man and the mental side of it, because they have a lot of responsibility. Each individual does, in order to get around 9 holes or 18 holes of golf and not feel like you just had the worst day of your life.
Yeah, and that does happen so much. I mean, I can think of dozens and dozens of times with, even some of my own friends that played, and I would see them, and I would almost know every course that we ever played on. When we would get to certain holes, I would almost guarantee, Paul was going to shoot this or Dave was going to shoot that. I could almost predict what they were going to shoot, because they would, it's kind of like, if you think about it from this perspective, if you keep making the same mistakes, you're going to end up with the same results.
Exactly.
And, if you don't make changes, then you're not going to change the results more often than not. You might get lucky once in a while, but more often than not, if you're choosing the same options each time you come to those holes, more likely than not, unless you've improved dramatically between the last time you played it, you're going to see pretty much the same results. Gary, let me ask you. Sorry, go ahead. If you wanted to, I heard you.
I was just going to say, in golf, it's not a reaction sport. So we'll say that, we'll use an example that there's water down the right hand side, and all of a sudden the last time you played it, you sliced it in the water. Well, guess what? Maybe this time, you take the 6-iron or the 3-wood and you play it around. You have the option. Again, if you're coaching yourself, you have good course management, saying, you know what, my confidence is not on this hole. The last time I played it, I knocked it in the water, so I'm going to be smarter. I'm going to take and maybe play this hole 3 or 4 times, on the more conservative side, and then maybe when I get my confidence, I'll pull my driver out again. But, people don't seem to execute that mental side of golf, that we have a choice on what club we're going to hit. And if this hole's too tough for us because we sliced the ball in the water and right, then don't pull that club out. Like you said, why keep on doing the same thing wrong? Because you're going to get the same result.
Right. Let's talk a little bit. I mentioned a minute ago that I wanted to talk a little bit about the instruction side of things. I know you've taught for many years, as I have. First off, do you think instruction, in your opinion, has changed And if so, has it in some ways changed for the good or the bad, do you think?
I will say I love the video.
Or a little of both. A little of both.
Yeah. I will say that with the training aids and the things we get to use during practice, the video, I just had a lesson yesterday, and it's amazing when you're trying to get somebody just to kind of get a position down. I love the right hip, left hip, trying to get that impact area, nice and solid. And so I took some videos of this gentleman, and I said, okay, let's see if we can kind of keep it around the right hip. And so I take it, and he's got it above his shoulders. And before I show it, I said, what do you think? Do you think you had the club? Oh, yeah, I think I was right there. He was shocked to see himself with his hands that high. So the video brings to light, the accountability that a golfer needs to have when he practices. Anybody can get a rhythm when you're hitting, 100 golf balls in a row. But the hard part is when we play golf on the golf course, you hit one shot. So if it calls for a half swing or if it calls for a certain position, you have to be able to execute that right now when you need to. You don't get to keep on throwing another one down. Let me just keep on hitting until I like one. So I'm huge on the video. I love it that I can call my students out saying, okay, your hands are above your head. You've got a full swing going. Your shoulders are fully turned. Your hands are above. And you're going to think about hitting about a 60-yard shot. I said, you're going to be hitting it over the back of the green. So so this instruction, I think, is gone better that way with it.
Right. Do you think, though, Gary, that at times we maybe overcomplicate things as instructors? Do you think sometimes, and let me just preface this first before you respond. I've been a big proponent. I certainly believe in a lot of the training aids out there. I certainly believe in the technology out there that's made available for instructors. But one of the things, and this goes on to the point that you talked about with Ed earlier, that he was able to look at his players, and he was able to assess based on certain things that they were doing, what the results were going to be. Do you think that some out there are relying too much on the technology to give them that information and not as much of the visual? In other words, they're focusing more on the numbers in the instruction, club head speed and so forth. And I'm talking about the instructors now. I'm not talking about the players or the students. And as a result, do you think that they're making learning the golf swing too complicated for a lot of folks out there?
Yeah, well, but you're talking about a hip angle, and you're talking about spine angles, and that for the average guy who is working a full-time job and he's playing golf on the weekends and he decides to take a lesson, and all of a sudden we start throwing spine angle and your right hip is higher than your left, and he's looking at you like, are you kidding me? I'm just trying to make some decent contact with the golf ball. So we, because of our ability with this unbelievable equipment nowadays, the videos and the TrackMans and the flight scopes and ball speed and spin rates and it can get overwhelming with that. And what we have seen over the years, and I'm talking back in the early 1900s with the Bobby Jones and the Francis Ouimets and the Hogans, they learned a great golf swing without any of this stuff whatsoever.
Right.
So I think that we as instructors, and I'm very cautious, and I understand when my students say, okay, Gary, well, what else am I doing wrong? I really try to limit to one or two things. Because as you know, Ted, when you look at a golf swing, and we all have, you could probably say about 11, 12, 13 things I'd love to change right now. But this guy's going to go home and probably have dinner with his wife, and he won't be thinking about golf until he goes back to the range or something. So as instructors, we need to kind of just get on their level and say, okay, we're going to work on the right knee. We're going to work on your shoulder turn. We're going to work on just a weight shift, and try to keep it simple. Because I think overall, don't you think that they want it simple? They don't want the golf machine, theory that Bobby Clampett got into years ago and mathematics. And I don't think that the average person who's taking a lesson. So I think the responsibility for a PGA, golf professional, anybody who's teaching people how to play golf, is you got to make sure you calm them down and say, listen, here's what we're going to work on today, and we're going to keep it simple. So they walk away with a little bit, okay, I think I understood that.
Right, exactly. Gary, I see that we've got somebody else here on the line, so let's bring them on and have them join in the conversation. Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. You're on live with Gary Brooks.
Great. This is Jim in Spring, Texas.
Jim, how are you doing this evening?
Jim, how are you?
Just fine.
Jim, do you have something you want to share with us tonight?
Well, I was going to try to talk about the straight arm a little bit, if that's okay.
Sure. We haven't officially introduced it yet on the program, but by all means, go ahead. Oh. You've obviously used the straight arm.
I have.
Okay, tell us about. Let me just do this, Jim. Before I get you to do that, let's just real quick, Gary. Let's just tell them about. As I mentioned in the opening credits on the program, Gary, of course, invented a great product. Gary, if you could just take a moment, Jim, if you could just bear with us, Gary, I want you to just take a quick moment just to describe a little bit about what the product is, and then we'll let Jim carry on and hit with his thoughts.
I came up with the straight arm in the early '90s, and that's when video was starting to really kind of come on. And as I'm videotaping my students, and we've all heard that term, the chicken wing. And as you know, when you come down and we'll say for a right-handed golfer, that left arm tends to fold and the left wrist tends to fold, and all that flippiness tends to come through that hitting area. So I was trying to think, well, how can I get my average students just a little bit more through that impact area and keep that arm not rigid or not locked in, but just a little bit straighter, toward that impact area. And so I started experimenting with a bunch of different goofy carpet tubes and whatever. And kind of came up with some plastic ideas and some straps ideas and all that. And it seemed to help. And between the video and the straight arm, as I was putting on my students, they were making better contact with it. So that's kind of how it kind of evolved of getting a little bit more success. And of course, as you know, Ted, when you see those eyes look at you and they go, that could be the best shot I think I've ever hit in my life. We all like that. We all like, we get, that to be that 8 or 9 year old kid, it's like Christmas kind of a thing. Yeah. So the straight arm kind of, it evolved around, just trying to get people to hit better, and have them give more of a feedback, them understand it. Right. So it wasn't a permanent lock it in, use it for the rest of your life. It was kind of like you put it on, you take it off, you put it on, just to give them an understanding. Here's what it feels like when you use it, and when you take it off, here's what it feels like, and here's the result. Right.
Jim, why don't you share with us your experience with a straight arm?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead, but I wanted to.
No, that's fine.
I started using the straight arm several years ago, and as Gary and you guys have mentioned, it kind of just changed the outlook of how you hit the ball. What I thought I was doing correctly obviously was very incorrect, and the straight arm helped a great deal in helping me correct that. So as I've gotten better, I still go back to the same old problems and so forth when you're not playing as much. And so I put the straight arm back on my arm, and that seems to help me straighten out some of my flaws in my swing. And you're right, when you're playing with your buddies, if you hit the best shot in the world, even if you're playing for $1, it feels like $1 million.
Well, Jim, let me ask you this, and I'm not sure if this is sometimes something that you do, but for those that now obviously you're out in Texas, and you have some pretty good golf weather for most of the season, I'm sure. But for those up in the Northeast, as an example, that get a little bit rusty through the winter months, maybe don't have the accessibility to go into an indoor facility to practice, do you see the straight arm being a great tool to sort of put on at the beginning of this new season, just to sort of as a refresher? Do you see that being a good application for it?
Oh, I do. I really do. I think it was a great thing for me to buy. I bought it again, like I said, several years ago, and the beginning of every season, and even during the middle, when you think you're getting your swing down and you're honing your skills, even as a mid-level amateur, you still get some bad habits, and you find yourself falling back into those ruts. And I know it certainly has helped me quite a bit, and I'm really enjoying it. I mean, I enjoy the product. I really do.
And how? Just let me ask you real quick, Jim. How often do you normally try to play in the season? on a
I'm
week?
I'm hoping they do 3 times a month. So, I'm not sure, at least once or twice a week guy, unfortunately, but 3 times a month, and that keeps you somewhat, going back and forth, but you can lose your rhythm real quick.
Do you find, obviously with the product, because it is, like they said, it is keeping your arm straight, your lead arm straight. Do you find that your short game improves a lot, keeping everything together after using that? Do you find a noticeable improvement in your short game as well as in the long game?
Well, I think honestly that's probably where it helped me the most. I wasn't having near as much problem with the driver and the long irons, but when I got into the eights, down to pitching wedge, I found myself breaking down, and the straight arm just does not allow you to do that. It even helped my putting, which I didn't even think. I thought that was just a bonus, but that really helped the putting game and the short game quite a bit.
Do you think, too, Jim, that after using the straight arm a few times throughout the season and seeing the benefits and the results, the positive results that you're getting, that helps your confidence throughout the season?
Oh, no doubt. I think I was listening when we were talking. You guys were talking about the mental approach to the game, and frankly, I think for the amateur, it's probably the thing that they probably lose the most. And I find myself with a lot more confidence. Knowing that when I get inside 100 yards and I've got to go over a bunker to a short pin, I don't fear the shot as much as I did in the past. And again, I attribute that to the training and the ability to do it. But certainly, once you had the straight arm on, you could continue, and you had the confidence to make that shot over and over again.
So I guess it would be safe to say that you have no problem in recommending this to the many amateurs that might be listening out there tonight.
No matter, honestly, without hesitation, if you have a 20 handicap or you have a 2 handicap, you're going to benefit from the product, I think, wholeheartedly. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to call in tonight to let everybody know that we've used a lot, and it's really worked very well.
Well, fantastic. And I want to thank you, Jim, for calling in and sharing that with us. I appreciate it, and I hope you'll continue to listen on to the program. And much continued luck and success in your golf game as the season progresses. Well,
thank you. You've got a very good show, and I appreciate you letting me expound upon the straight arm.
Well, thanks you very
Jim.
much. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, good night.
Bye-bye.
I like hearing, Gary, when somebody has used the product like that, and, obviously he's not using it, all the time, but when he feels that confidence is lacking a little bit, and he feels that he, as he mentioned a couple of times, sort of falling back into some of the, bad habits that we all tend to do. Even the better players do that. Nobody's immune from it. It's nice to know that you've got something that you can go to say, okay, I'm going to put this back on, and I know that I'm going to be able to work through some of those issues. And obviously, he's able to see that success after doing that, and that gives you a good feeling, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it does. I think, and you as a golfer and as an instructor, feedback is everything. And you and I, Ted, have heard many, many students say, boy, I was at the range today and I got this, this rhythm going. I got, 2 buckets of balls. I was hitting the ball great. I went to the golf course and I never hit a good shot again. And what they were lost with is getting the feedback. When you hit a good shot, you should be asking yourself, well, how did I do that? Where were my hands, my legs, and my arms, my shoulders, and what did I feel? Was my grip pressure right? So I think training aids and, course management and good coaching, mental coaching to yourself, I think you need all those combinations to play well. And as you and I could probably do, Ted, we can name many, many tour players that have great golf swings right now, but all of a sudden they have 1 or 2 years, and all of a sudden they have a couple of hiccups in their swing or whatever, and all of a sudden what happened to them? And, golf and confidence goes hand in hand, I think, that if you're going to play well consistently. And we've seen many, many good players, and pick on putting, because everybody in the world tends to get that 3-footer, that 2-footer for whatever amount of challenge of best score, $1, a nickel, or whatever, and all of a sudden you don't have the confidence, and all of a sudden your stroke goes goofy and crazy with that. We've seen this on the tour and stuff. So, the confidence level is, and I tell you one thing, when I was watching Ed Oldfield, when he was teaching the tour players, Ed would never watch the golf ball.
Right.
And he would look at them, and he would watch all their body motions, and then they would look back at him, and he says the ball went to the left. And they would look at him and go, well, how do you know that? And he would explain to them, because here's what your arm and your leg and your shoulders and the timing, and it was amazing on what he did. And so he was teaching them to feel a good swing and to feel a bad swing so they could correct it. And it was amazing. That's where probably the straight arm kind of evolved around that, was, if you can feel it, you can change it. If you can't feel what you're doing wrong, you can't change it.
And that's so true. I mean, a lot of players, certainly can relate to that. I mean, not everybody is necessarily a feel player. Some, like to see what the result is, see what happens with the ball. But I think now with the advancement of, ball flight and that sort of thing as time has gone on, I think, that's helped tremendously. But, I think it's great, an instructor like Ed that's able to visualize. I think that's so important, as I just touched on a few moments ago. It's great, all this technology, but the facts and the figures are helpful to us as instructors. But again, as I've said many times in the program, relaying that information sometimes to the students gets very confusing. And one of the things that I like about your product, the Straight Arm, is it is a very simple product. And I like that. I like simple. I think the simpler you can make something, as long as they are able to see and feel results from it, then, you don't need to have all of this technology and so forth. A simple product like the Straight Arm can do just as well as a $3,500 or $10,000 piece of equipment. And and I think that's what we do. Gary, I want to talk a little bit more about that, but before we continue on, I just want to remind everybody that we are live here every Thursday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, unless otherwise specified. And you're listening to Golf Talk Live on the blogtalkradio.com network. And if you want to find the show, if you're listening to us, you found us. But for those that are tuning in, I appreciate if you share the link to those that aren't able to join us tonight, and you just simply go to www.blogtalkradio.com, and up in the search key, type Golf Talk Live, and that'll get you here. Or if you're somebody that's on an iTunes or an iPad, you can go to iTunes and search under the podcast list and just type in Golf Talk Live, and you can listen to the downloads there as well, or at Stitcher.com. And if you're listening to the show right now during the live broadcast from 6 to 8 on Thursday, we would love to hear from you. As Alex and Jim have called in, we would love for you to call in and talk a little bit about your experience with the Straight Arm, if you've had some, or maybe you have some questions for Gary while he's here on the phone. And you can do so by calling area code 646-716-4667. That number again is 646-716-4667. And you can certainly email any questions or comments to me at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. And you can follow along on Facebook at Golf Talk Live blog. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Ted and Buck CEO. Gary, I know that you have some video, and unfortunately we can't show that here, and I don't want anybody leaving the program. If you're tuning in right now, I don't want you to go and do that now, but we'll give that information out where you can go and check out some of the videos to see exactly how the product works. There is some photos that I've uploaded on here, so if you're watching on your computer, you can see at the top there, you can see some of the photos of how the Straight Arm looks when it's on you. But you can go to some video, and Gary, what's the website that they can go and see some of the videos?
It is straightarm.net.
Perfect. So if you want to do that, and remember, go after the show, folks. Don't go now. We have still more to talk to Gary about, so don't leave the show. You can watch the videos afterwards, but go to straightarm.net, and you can see the product in its full demonstration. Gary, obviously it's a very popular training tool. How many have you sold over the years since it first came out, you think? Quite a few, I know.
Last count, I believe I'm over 45,000.
Wow, fantastic. That's
fun.
incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And I can certainly understand after listening to Jim, testimony here just a few moments ago, I can certainly understand why it's as popular. And it's not just popular with the folks out there trying to learn the game, but it's also become very popular, as I see from literally a laundry list of PGA and LPGA instructors, many of whom, of course, are your colleagues who have used the straight arm in their teaching as well. Maybe you can share a few of the more prominent ones that you're familiar with and share some of the feedback that you've gotten from them.
Yeah, as Jim had mentioned too, people love it when they work with the short game, and I'm sure you've had some of these students that you get them, that 10, 15 yards away from the green, and they just kind of quit on the shot, and you see them flipping and what have you. So a lot of these instructors, the Ted Shepticks, the Mike Benders, the Susie Whaleys, the Ann Kellys from Colorado. They work with a lot of their prominent students, with a lot of the short game stuff. As you know, that 10 to 15 yard shot around the green is as important as any other shot in golf. If you happen to be short on your second shot, boy, that's important. Let it be chipping it in, you still save your birdie, or obviously chipping it close so you can one putt it or so. What we tend to see at all levels, and Ted, whether or not you saw this a couple of weeks ago with Tiger, he had a couple of chip shots that he hit about 3 feet in front of him that were supposed to go about 10 to 20 yards. So when you quit on a shot, and what the straight arm kind of helps you a little bit is to kind of just stay with it, and that's what they like about it most. It's kind of hitting through that area rather than making that stab or that jab at it and just collapse. And we'll say break the arm down or break the wrist down or so at that point. So that's what probably one of the biggest feedbacks I've gotten from a lot of these prominent PGA teachers that are using it for those reasons, a lot of the short game stuff.
Yeah, and I think and something too that people have to understand is there are so many products on the market to help instructors teach the game, but most of them will tell you that once they find something that they really like and is doing what they need it to do, they're going to stick with it. And we obviously get bombarded by a lot of things, especially if you go down to the PGA show. There's always some new gadget or gizmo coming out, but there's a lot of them, and certainly not to criticize any of them, but there's some of them out there that I just don't see the application as well. But when you sent me out some samples of this, the straight arm, it became very quick and apparent the benefits that I was not only going to see myself, but also those that I'm working with. So I'm going to be using that more frequently for sure. I want to mention too something that was really caught my eye, and we talked about this, you and I, here recently. And those of you that, of course, that have seen some of the golf movies out there, we all remember Caddyshack, of course, and another very well-known movie that was out there was Tin Cup, starring Mr. Kevin Costner. Was another great movie. And I see from a photo on your website, and you had sent me one as well, that Kevin is wearing the straight arm in one of the movie scenes. How did that come about?
That's probably one of my greatest little tiny stories. So I'm on the range, and I invented the straight arm in 1991, and 1996 is when the movie Tin Cup came out. So I'm on the range, and I'm out there, and I'm giving lessons all day long, and I had a gentleman walk up to me, and he says, you're in the movies. And I'm looking at him, and I'm really deep into a lesson, and I said, what are you talking about? I'm just not making any sense. He goes, well, my wife and I went to the movies last night, and you're in it. And I'm sure I had this goofy blank look on my face. And I said, well, I don't understand what you're telling me. He says, your straight arm, it's in the movie, this movie that's out. And I said, well, what movie is that? And he says, it's Tin Cup. Well, I'll guarantee you, my wife and I jumped in the car that night. I called her on the way home. I said, we got to go to the movies tonight. And there we are sitting in the theater. And as you know how big the screens are. And in the what's that? He's in his trailer there it is on full screen, along with many other things. There's Kevin Costner wearing the straight arm, and there's a couple other scenes that he has in the bag, and I'm not sure, I don't remember, I haven't watched the movie in a while, if Renee Russo even puts it on, and she's using it because she had a bunch of this stuff on. So it was just kind of fun to think that, you invent something, and all of a sudden it makes it into the movies. So it's just kind of a funny thing that it just happened to make it in like that.
Were you able to find out through any sources how that came about? Was it just by pure chance, or did somebody at the studio, do you think, or were you able to find out how that sort of got into the movie?
I don't. I wrote a couple letters way back in '96, and typically, I'm sure that many people, they go unanswered.
Sure.
I should probably pursue that again. Because it'd be fun. I was looking just to get like an autographed poster or something with that on there. But it would have been fun to have something along the lines of a little autograph with Kevin Costner, wearing the straight arm or something. So that might be my future goal.
Now, do you think I think that would be fantastic. Do you think as a result of obviously, you had seen it and others had seen it, do you think that certainly helped boost sales a little bit, do you think, as well? Because I'm sure,
I'm going to say probably, yeah. Everything I think in that movie, I think is still on the market today. I was kind of looking a couple of years ago at that stuff, and it just gives it a sense of, geez, what is that? And as you know, we as humans love to poke at things and look at things going, well, what does that do? And what does he? So he's wearing it on his left arm, and he was going through the shanks or something at that time. So as golfers love to have that secret answer out there, I'm sure it increased sales. So that was kind of fun for me.
Yeah, and any time you get some really free publicity like that, and that's why what's unique about it is usually to get a product in a movie like that, a lot of times companies would have to pay thousands, in sponsorship dollars or advertising dollars just to get their brand across the screen. And here you are, unbeknownst to you, out working on the range, and come to find that your product's being featured in really a major movie with a major Hollywood celebrity, and that's fantastic. And
well, even how he has it on, I mean, you can actually read the straight arm right on there. I mean, they could have very easily flipped that thing around and nobody would have a clue of what he's got on his arm or something. So they actually did it so actually you could read straight arm right on there, so which was kind of neat.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure it was probably from somebody that's used it, was a fan, and said we need to get this in the movie. But that's fantastic. Now, as I said, we obviously can't really demonstrate it here, but let's talk about some of the other benefits that the folks out there can get from the straight arm. Obviously, when you were developing this, it really wasn't designed. It was designed for really all facets of the game, as Jim pointed out as well earlier in his call. It's helped him with his putting. What was in your original thought process when you were developing this? What were you really trying to accomplish with developing this?
Well, you know what? I'm a huge fan of just the basic fundamentals, and what I had learned from Ed and watching these tour players who literally every shot meant dollars to them. And we heard it back when Jack Grout was teaching Jack Nicklaus, about the very still head, and let the head move around up and down from side to side. So we'll take just a kind of a generic standard golfer. So when we have correct posture and we extend our arms holding onto this golf club and it's touching the ground, that's our posture. Yeah. So my theory with the straight arm is if you change the dynamics of that left arm position, and if that thing crunches or does its chicken wing, that's typically when you watch a video of somebody who does that, in order to make contact with the golf ball, they've got to lower their body because there's that compensation in there. So from what good ball strikers do is that they maintain, not locked in or not, so rigid, but they maintain that position. So as they, go into their backswing and they come back down to that hitting area, they still have that same position that they started off with. So whenever you change those dynamics, so the straight arm was kind of designed around just getting people to keep their body still. Keep it simple. Here are the fundamentals. Don't upper and lower your body, up and down, and you see the head moving all over the place, because then you have to almost reinvent your wheel coming to make contact with that golf ball again. So if we could keep that one dynamic of for a right-handed golfer, that lead arm, left arm straight, and as you made your turn and then you unturned and you still had that same position, chances are you're going to come back and hit a good portion of the sweet spot with that club, because your left arm was straight. And that's what the success came in that I've seen with the straight arm. And it really is kind of, Ted, just that right hip to left hip teaching aid. It's not above your head. We all know that once you finish your swing, both arms collapse and you crumble down and you look at your shot and you admire it. So it's pretty much just a kind of a below the hips type of swing, let it be right-handed or left-handed, just to give you the feel of not collapsing and lowering your body at that impact area. And I tell you just a couple quick little notes. The people who had the worst chicken wings, and I would put the straight arm on them because, as you know, people play by habit. They had a habit of bending their arm and lowering their body, to make, we'll say, reasonable contact. When I put the straight arm on them, of course, the arm didn't bend, but guess what? Their body lowered, their head lowered, and, of course, now they hit it about a foot behind the golf ball, and they go, well, that didn't do me any good. I said, well, you realize that, once you correct one thing, it's going to, detour the other thing from being correct. So we've got to get, between the chicken wing eliminated, arm straight, we got to keep your posture and your head tall in that starting position. Now as you turn and unturn, now you're going to, and then all of a sudden they finally got it. They understood that.
Yeah, and that's something too. And I want to share with the listeners tonight, what I really got from it as well. And I'm a big proponent of, there's a lot of different theories out there, and everybody has their own take on what they feel is the right and correct golf swing. But I'm always a firm believer. I've sort of subscribed to the theory that one-piece takeaway. And what I found by putting it on is by keeping that, because even though I'm left-handed, I swing right-handed. That's how I was taught. We were joking about that off air on the phone the other day about that. That was how my father, everybody sort of taught left-handed people as though they were right-handed. And I'm in a way I'm glad he did, because I like hitting that way better anyways. But but what I found it helped me to do is to have that feeling of sort of taking everything back together, and by keeping my arm straight. And actually what I did, and I told you this as well, is you actually sent me two. There's one a little bit longer one, and then there's a shorter version, which I'm assuming is more for somebody that's arms aren't quite as long perhaps. But what I did was I put the longer one on my left and I put the shorter one on my right. And just, as you said, just sort of went part way back. Obviously, I wasn't expecting to do a full shoulder turn, but I just wanted to, in that area, as you said, below the hips on both sides, just to have that feeling of a one-piece sort of takeaway and then follow through before, obviously your arms are going to collapse at some point. And I just, it really sort of helped me, and I could see, as Jim was talking earlier about how he would, strap his on and be able to get out there, and it would sort of, give him that memory, if you will, of doing sort of the right things. And that's how I saw it, was sort of helping with that, reminding me to do that one-piece takeaway. And is that a feedback you get quite a bit from a lot of your users?
Oh, very much so. And it's funny, the quick story, so here you have Mike Bender, who is rated number 4 in Golf Digest as far as teachers go. So I get a phone call last August, and it's through Mike Bender, and I asked the person who was doing his buying for him. I said, well, how did he come across the straight arm? And he said, well, he bought it about 20 years ago, and somehow the student borrowed it, never brought it back, or it just got misplaced or whatever, and he was using carpet tubes and all that stuff. And so then he ended up, of course, getting a hold of me and buying more. And what I realized and what I found out what Mike does is what you're talking about, Ted, is that one-piece takeaway. And he uses a lot of the straight arm techniques, we'll say for a right-handed golfer, on their right arm. He wants that long one-piece takeaway, and we've all heard Peter Costas and most of these guys when they started seeing the Biz Swing Hub film on television, they talk about width. So Mike's big thing with all of his students is width. And by putting, picture a right-handed golfer, putting the straight arm on the right arm, and just what you said, you put both of them on, it makes you go way out there, that long piece rather than that collapsing, bring it in quick, and, start to bring it close to the, your cheek, and your hands are close to your cheek. So Mike's big proponent, as you had mentioned, is really take it away one piece. I want you way back there before you're going to be bringing it back. So you and Mike are on the same wavelength with that. I like that.
Yeah, and that's what I think that as I mentioned to you the other day, one of the benefits that I have, especially when it gets a little nippier outside and not able to get out to the range and I'm talking about myself, is I have a one wall, actually part of my wall in my home is mirrored. So I'm able, and of course I've got very high ceilings, so I can actually practice my swing, if you will, inside a little bit, not have to worry about breaking anything, and I can see myself. So, a lot of times I would do that, and I put the straight arm the other day, actually after we talked, and did it just a few sort of drills with it and that, and it's amazing the feedback, that you get from the products, and I like that both as a student would feel, but also as an instructor. I can see and feel the benefits that my students would certainly have. And I deal, as I told you the other day, I deal with a lot of corporate types, and a lot of them don't have a lot of time to get out and practice all the time, and they want to just sort of ingrain that feeling. And so I'm going to certainly encourage a lot of them to visit your website and pick up one. I'm not going to give them mine because I'll never see it again, but I might let them use it, but I'm not going to loan it to them because I know I'll never get it back. But I'm certainly going to direct them your way. But that's one of the things that I like about it is the feedback that you get from it.
Well, number one, you're in good company because Ben Hogan was left-handed and played right-handed golf too. So it's and the hard part that I've seen, I'm sure you've seen it too, is that typically a right-handed golfer is a right-handed person. So when they're coming into that impact area, and we'll say that right hand is going to fire at 50 miles an hour, the chances, because they're not very coordinated in that left hand, is when all the collapsing comes in. So for when you're doing it, you have such an advantage because you do have great hand-eye coordination and ability to snap and get that moment of impact with your left and also with your right. So the straight arm is kind of identifying with the average right-handed golfer who is right-handed dominant that he needs to work on the strength and the coordination of that left hand. So as much as we think and say, by the way, keep that left arm somewhat straight as you're coming back to the impact area, well, if you don't have the coordination or the strength and the ability to do it, we can think it all we want, but you need to strengthen that. So the straight arm's kind of giving them that little bit of that edge of saying, if you did have a stronger and more coordinated left hand, this is what would happen, and this is what the result's going to be, and this is what you would feel. So it's kind of that little bit of a Band-Aid kind of a thing. But I'm a huge proponent. I always tell them, I said, you know what, swing with it on, swing with it off, swing with it on, swing with it off. So it's you want to you don't want to be locked into using it because you're not going to strengthen your muscles that way. But if you identify that you need to do that, and I do a lot with my students. I love medicine balls. I have them do a lot of picking up with their right and with their left, and I see a huge difference of what they can do with their right hand with the medicine ball, what they do with their left. I have them throw golf balls with their right hand. I have them throw golf balls with their left. I said, the straight arm is going to help you, for the immediate problem right now, but in the future, when you're playing golf and you're not using the straight arm on the golf course because you can't, as you know, that's illegal. I said, you want to, here is identifying your weakness. So you, as an individual golfer, need to identify it and then work on it. So the straight arm tells you what you're doing wrong. It gives you the feedback, but now take it off and then go out there and work on it. So you had a great idea with, with the mirrors and stuff that, people when it's cold outside or even before they play or whatever, just put it on, swing it a couple of times, get that feeling of understanding what it should at the moment of impact, and then, of course, when you go out and play golf, hopefully you can remember that.
Yeah, and that's where, as I said to Jim earlier when he called in, especially those that are up in the Northeast or even the Northwest, I guess, that are in some of the colder climates right now and don't have the benefit of coming down to Florida or some of the other southern states and take advantage in these winter months. When things start to thaw up there and they get back out, what a great tool to start your year off with and get out and practice, because a lot of times, they'll get out and they'll hit balls, but they're still making a lot of the same mistakes, that they traditionally make. So I'm always a firm believer, let's start the season off right. And I know that there's certainly a lot of indoor facilities for people to go and warm up, but not everybody has that, available time these days, with everybody sometimes holding down a couple of jobs. So, anything that you can do to give yourself an advantage like that, I'm all for it, and that's where I can see a great application for somebody that doesn't have the ability to play golf all year round. Is it's a great tool to start that season out and just sort of groove back into that proper feeling.
Well, I feel that because of the individuality that golf is, that everything we do affects the golf ball. I mean, here you have this, especially nowadays more than it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. Here you've got this perfect golf ball. You've got these great clubs. So the only other missing link is what you as the body source is going to do. So if my hands or arms or legs and all that move a certain way, the golf ball is going to react to that. So the better we can have these, and our golf muscles, meaning right hand and left hand, because golf is a two-handed game, more so than I think in most other sports. So if we can be mindful of what the hands and the arms and the legs and, all these positions, when we look up, the golf ball should go in those positions. I always give my students, I love to give them little goofy little things to think about. I said, okay, if you took your 7-iron and you hit that one golf ball out there, it's going to do one thing. If I went out there and got the exact same golf ball and I used your 7-iron, that ball will do something different, because your body made it do one thing and my body made it do something else. So I try to get them to realize that they're 100% in control of what that ball does. So the equipment, great ball, great club, but it's the body that's that missing link of why the ball's going way right or way left. And don't you love it, Ted, when they put a club in your hand going, you know what, this club doesn't work, I'm going to get rid of it, and all of a sudden you swing and you hit a golf ball going, well, I guess it's not the club. And you're looking at them going, well, of course it's not the club, it's you.
Exactly. Gary, I see that we've got somebody else that wants to join us here this evening, so let's bring them on and have them join us in the conversation. All right, good evening and welcome. You're on live on Golf Talk Live. You're joining us here with Mr. Gary Brooks. Who do we have the pleasure of talking to?
Chad.
Chad, welcome to the program.
How are you?
Hello, Chad.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good.
I'm fairly new to golf. I was thinking maybe your straight arm could help me out a little bit. I took a lesson one time, and I don't know if it's because the instructor was heavier set or what, but he taught me to break my arms on the backswing, and doesn't seem to help me out much. And everybody I watch golf keeps their arms straight. So I guess I'm wondering, where can I find it at, and do you have any other tips for me? Because what I was taught isn't working for me.
Yeah, great question. Number one, it's on straightarm.net is my website. There are tour players, not very many of them, but there are tour players who do bend their arm going back, and I'm not sure exactly what their philosophy is and why they do that. But if you look at them at impact, and actually only one golfer that I can ever think of that's currently playing is Lee Westwood, who actually has a little bit of a bend in his elbow when he comes down and hit the golf ball. But if you took probably 300 or 400 of the top PGA players right now, their arms are straight at impact. And as I mentioned earlier, it's just so your head does not have to go up and down. I tell you, Chad, the first thing besides purchasing a straight arm, which would be great, is to start doing a lot of just half swings to start off with. Have you ever seen your swing on video and how much your arm is bending?
No, but I purposely bend it, so I mean, I know it's breaking completely, and when I come down, I just don't feel like I have control.
Yeah, and
it's not consistent, I guess.
Yeah, typically if somebody's bending their arm, and Ted, you can jump in if you'd like on this, but typically when that arm is bent, usually that wrist is also collapsed in the other direction. Very seldom do I see somebody bend their arm and then keep their wrist, we'll say, flat to their forearm. So when the arm bends, which is we'll say a problem, and then when the wrist bends, that's a problem. And if you're looking to get, we'll say, accuracy and a little bit of power, with that wrist bending in a very awkward motion, as Ted knows, when you go through that hitting area and that impact, and all of a sudden you have that, we'll say for a right-handed golfer, that left hand is flush to the right arm, and as you go and you get right about to that left hip area, if you notice that small rotation of the hands, that wrist is still flat to the arm. This is how our wrists as humans react. And through the fundamentals of golf, they've incorporated that into the golf swing to get the most effective power and swing out of it. So when the wrists are bending in the opposite direction, you're pretty much defeating the purpose of everything else that you probably worked really hard at fundamentally to get. So you've kind of given it all away in that breaking down position.
Yeah, and let me just jump in real quick here, Chad. The other thing too that when you're bending your arms like that I've and Gary, I know that you'll agree with this, is again zapping that power. What often happens when you break down that wrist and collapse your arms, in order to get power and get distance, you have to rush through the follow through, and what ends up happening there is you lose your sense of timing, and it's not a very fluid sort of smooth swing. It's very jerky and very rushed. And I've seen a lot of people do that, and it zaps you with a lot of power, but also throws your timing off as well. So definitely, Chad, you want to go to straightarm.net and get yourself one of them, the products first off and foremost. But certainly, Gary, what you suggested is right on.
Chad, on my website I have a lot of videos, and I'm a huge proponent of that right hip, left hip, and it's more or less at that right hip, left hip, just to kind of get control and understand what you're doing before you progress into that longer swing. So I always kind of really emphasize to my students, we'll say if you're going to have 10 balls in front of you, if you hit 7-ish between that right hip and that left hip, and then take 3 above your head and see how it's reacting. But we love habit, and golf should be played a little bit by habit because there's too much going on once you hit the golf course. You want to be able to go on the golf course and keep that. But the left arm position, I think every golf magazine, digest, and even on the tour, and you hear Peter Costas, is that everybody's a huge proponent on keeping that lead arm, within reason, not locked in as straight as possible. So try those half swings, and it might help you.
Okay, one more question. Is this a one-size-fits-all? Would it fit a lady if I wanted my wife to use it?
I have some height recommendations. I will say this. I've had a lot of people who have purchased it. So I recommend that if you're 5'9" or taller, go with the large size. And if you're 5'8" and less, to go with that medium size. But again, I've seen and I've heard that people at all different heights can accomplish and like both sizes. So, but at least you can start off with that. And if you happen to purchase one and it's not fitting the size, whatever, feel free to send it back to me, and I'll have no problem to send you the other size.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks a lot, Gary and Ted.
Sure.
Not a problem. Chad, thank you for sharing your thoughts with us here, and appreciate for calling in. And Gary, I've got another caller here on hold, so I'm going to bring him in. Chad, you have a great evening, and certainly make sure you go to straightarm.net and get yourself one.
I will. Thanks.
Thank you,
All right,
Chad.
thanks. All right.
Thanks, Gary.
And we've got another call here, Gary, so let's bring them on as well. Good evening and welcome to Golf Talk Live. Sorry to keep you waiting, and you're on with Gary Brooks.
Hi, my name is Lee Taylor. I'm a PGA professional, and I got to tell you a little bit about the straight arm and, of course, the founder, Gary Brooks. Would that be okay?
That would be just perfect, Lee. By all means, we're happy to hear it.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm in the Philadelphia area, so you can appreciate the Northeast being in bad shape. But at any rate, this is the perfect time for all the listeners. This is the time to work on your game. It's spring training time. You're not going to be throwing your fastball, in other words, the very first day of spring training. You got to start making some changes. And there are so many people that their lead arm, meaning if they're a right-handed golfer, and their left arm is bending at the moment of impact, and that's the moment of truth, they've got, really slim and none chances of achieving what they need. And this straight arm device actually accomplishes what you need to do. And the caller that just called in I was listening to, he asked some very good questions about the size, and Gary answered nicely, as he usually does, that Gary will help you. If the size doesn't fit, he will exchange it for you, no questions asked. You couldn't go wrong with a straight arm. There's so many training devices on the market, Ted, that don't work. They look great on television. They don't work. This one actually works. And I just praise the Lord for Gary and him putting this together. This is a training aid that I certainly endorse.
Lee, let me ask you real quick, based on that endorsement, do you think one of the reasons, obviously being a PGA instructor yourself, one of the things that you like about it is the fact that it's simple? It's not overcomplicating anything. It gets straight to the, no pun intended, straight to the point. It deals with what many golfers struggle with, is keeping and preventing those arms, as Chad had pointed out, from collapsing in the backswing, which ultimately is going to create problems in the follow through. Do you think that because it is a simple device like that makes it uniquely invaluable?
Well, Ted, good points, and I'm going to question you on one of them. Regarding bending the left arm, or if they're a right-handed golfer, at the top of the swing, take a look at Kenny Perry's swing. That guy bends his left arm than most amateurs. Yet on the downswing, his left arm is straight as can be. And I want to emphasize the word straight as opposed to the word tight. They're two different words. They don't necessarily mean the same. Extended is a better word, and this device works. Now, what is so great about it? You can swing a golf club with this device on and actually play golf with it. A lot of these training aids, and maybe most of them, you have to do so many things without hitting a golf ball, and I don't like that. I need to be able to hit golf balls with a training device, and that's going to make me change my muscle memory.
Yeah, and you're exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right, Lee. I know, and I'm sure you've been down to the PGA show before in Orlando, and as we were, Gary and I were just talking a few minutes ago, there's all kinds of different training aids out there, and certainly a lot of good ones, but there's a lot out there that I feel miss the mark. And, you need to have that feedback both as a player, but particularly as a coach or as a teacher. You want to be able to have that feedback because it's very difficult to explain something to somebody if they can't sort of have that feeling themselves. And if you're not able to feel it, through using that product, because obviously you want to try the product before you expose it to your students. So are you currently using it with your students, and how long have you been doing that?
Good question, Ted. And first of all, before I answer your question, thanks for having a golf show. We need this kind of stuff, especially in the wintertime. Now, to answer your question, I've been using it probably for about 15 years, I guess.
Fantastic.
It actually is an item that works, and anybody that doesn't use it, it's two things. Either they're ignorant, they don't know enough about it, or either they're a fool. It works. And Gary, I know you're listening. How much money have you paid me to say any of this stuff? And the answer is nothing. You did give me a shirt, which I appreciated, and a nice mug. This item actually works. So, again, thank God. I need my students who want help, and if I can do everything I need to as far as coaching them and talking to them, verbalizing, videotaping, but until they feel that muscle sequencing changing, it's going to be very difficult for them to achieve what I, as an instructor, want them to do. and any instructor out there listening.
Yeah, Lee was probably one of my first big PGA professionals that started buying it, and I'm not sure how Lee came across it, but boy, Lee has steered a lot of his students to my website and over the 15. Wasn't it probably early 90s? I mean, I'm going to say 93, 94, 95 that you probably started purchasing the straight arm that we kind of got hooked up. But yeah, you've been a tremendous supporter for so many years. And Lee is such a quality instructor. Love the way he teaches. So thank you, Lee.
Well, you're welcome. You deserve it because it works, and that's the bottom line. Anybody that doesn't believe it, I'm sorry, you are a fool. This works.
Well said, Lee. Lee, just a couple of quick points I want to make. First off, thank you very much for calling in and sharing your thoughts, and thank you for compliments on the show. Exactly what you said is the reason why the show is here. I just felt it was long overdue, and I know there's a lot of programs out there that we can tune into, and we certainly watch the Golf Channel and some of the other ones that are on there. But I just felt that they're more focusing on the tours and stuff, which is great. We all like watching the Masters and all these different events, but I really felt that the golf industry needed a show that showcased great professionals like Gary and many of the others that come on here. And not just share with the average listeners out there, but also folks like yourself that are in the profession, sharing some great ideas, and we can all learn from one another. And so that's one of the reasons, Lee, that the show is about Golf Talk Live, and that's why we've had it here. And secondly, what I wanted to say is if you could maybe just sum up in a few words to your fellow instructors out there that are tuning in, because there are quite a few that do listen to the program as well. What words of encouragement would you, and I'm sure there's a lot of them, to go out and get one of Gary's products to use in their teachings day in, day out?
I pity the fool, as Mr. T would say, if they don't invest into this. It's that simple. This is a simple training aid. There are so many out there that don't work, and I think a lot of creative PGA professionals actually make their own. And this is one that's just a no-brainer. And Ted, I know you've got a Canadian accent, so I know that you're for the North. I will take care of you if you come down to Philadelphia. I'll get you taking Go Flyers.
Well, actually, I'm actually based out of Florida now. I gave up the snow shoveling and the Canadian cold winter, so I actually live in Florida now. So I'll have to come up. I'll have to come up, Lee, and take you up on that. But I appreciate you calling in. And Lee, I know as a fellow professional, I know that you would love to share some of your thoughts and that on the program. So I'm extending you here live on the air an invite to come on the program, and I'll make sure that Gary gives you my contact information. I won't do it now here on the air, but Gary, please forward that information on to Lee. And Lee, I would love to have you come on the program and share some of your insight and thoughts with the listeners.
I appreciate the opportunity. And Ted, thanks a lot for giving us more than what we probably deserve. You're right, the Golf Channel is a great tool, but what you're doing is on more of a local level that the amateurs need.
Yeah, and I agree, and I'm going to keep doing it, and as long as everybody tunes in, and the beauty of doing through this format too, Lee, is we get listeners literally around the globe that tune into this program every week, and it's growing and growing, and I literally I'm booked now until the end of April. I'm just getting so many people contacting me wanting to come on the show. So invite comes to you. The sooner we can get in touch with one another, the sooner I can get you on and let you share some great stuff while you're waiting for the spring thaw to come. You might as well come on and join us on Golf Talk Live and share some great conversation. Lee, thank you very much for joining and sharing some insight.
Terrific, thanks, and keep up the great show. Appreciate what you do, and bye-bye, Gary. Keep up the great work for all of us, all PGA professionals, and all the golfers that you help.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all your kind words. That was very nice.
Sure. All right, bye-bye.
Well, all right, good night. Thanks, Lee. one interesting note, when he made the comment about being a paid endorsement. I always looked at things this way: is if you have to be paid to endorse a product, it usually means it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm,
That's the way
I would agree.
Which is true. In many cases. So a great endorsement from Lee Taylor, a fellow PGA teacher professional. Thank you, Lee, for coming on the program and sharing your thoughts. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, we'll certainly have Gary reach out to you with my contact information, and we'll set something up and have you come on here. But in the meantime, enjoy the cool weather, and I know you're looking forward to getting back out there and playing some great golf yourself. But Gary, just in the last few minutes here we have in the show, let's remind everybody where they can get their hot little hands on one of the straight arms, and then we'll just talk a few more minutes here about some of the things coming up here in the golf industry. Just let everybody know.
It's at straightarm.net, and very easy website to get to. And they have a number of videos on there that kind of explains how to put it on, how to use it, different techniques, I hit different shots and stuff that people can see. I have a couple different angles that they can look at just to get a better understanding. And as you had pointed out, Ted, it's a very simple product to use. It's pretty much you can't destroy it. And one last note on Lee Taylor. Mm-hmm. I went out to see him about I think it was about a year ago or so. And so I'm watching him at his teaching station, and he has one that he had bought from me like in 1994 that he still uses every day on his students. So, again, people as they purchase these things, it's going to last you forever. So throw it in your golf bag. If you want to kick it around because you had a bad shot or something, keep it in your garage, whatever. So it's kind of as you know, Ted, there's a lot of products out there you use them 2 or 3 or 4 times before you know it, they break. And but this will last you forever.
and it's I like the fact that it can fit in the golf bag if need be, or certainly a suitcase or something. It can travel. It's very light and very easy to travel, and you don't have to worry about going through an airport checkpoint and worrying about metal and that, which is kind of nice, and setting off all kinds of bells and whistles with the TSA. But Gary, first off, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate that. And just on a quick note, let's just take a few moments here and just talk about some of the things. Of course, we got the Masters coming up here in short time, and what are your predictions for the Masters? Do you see? I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Tiger? So we'll leave him out of that. I know he's still nursing his wounds, if you will. But what would you like to see this year in the Masters? Do you want to see a newcomer, or do you want to see somebody from maybe from the past come back? Maybe one of the more seasoned veterans of the game.
Boy, I tell you, we can just start naming a number of players. Jason Day is he is ready to win, and if not to win the Masters, I think wasn't it like the last 3 to 4 years he's been like in the top 5 every time, and I think he was in the playoff once or twice or something. So he is primed to win. And then of course you've got the Jordan Spieth, you've got the Rory McIlroys. You've got Keegan Bradley, Jason Duffner probably still, out there somewhere. There's so many, is Luke Donald ready to win his first? So I think you have a great combination of the young players. Look at this Brooks Koepka, who just won. He played the Phoenix Open like I think it was the Phoenix, or no. Was it the Phoenix or was it the Torrey Pines that he just won? But he played it like he's won 3 or 4 or 5 tournaments before. So, there's a lot of just, I think anywhere between a person that's 18, 19, 20 years old to you've got Phil Mickelson, you've got Jim Furyk in his 40s. Yeah. Any of these guys, I think you've got about 200 players that are, whoever qualifies for the Masters can just walk away with it. I think this would be a hard pick this year, whereas, a couple of years ago, you probably had about 10, 11, 12 players that you pretty much knew were going to win it. But I got a feeling this thing is wide open.
Yeah, there's a lot of players that are knocking, at the door, so to speak. Trying to, Jason Day, as you mentioned, trying to push through that glass ceiling and win their first Masters. And there's a lot of them out there, and there's a lot of great talent coming out. And I really think that, despite lengthening Augusta National as they did there a few years ago, because of a lot of it was because of Tiger. I really think was unnecessary, to be quite honest. I think that,
I agree.
I think that Augusta is tough as nails without it, and I just think it's going to be a tough challenge for everybody. But it's really anybody's game, and I know it's a very sort of a lame expression. But really, I mean, anybody can win Augusta National. I mean, you could be leading it, as we've seen in the past with players like Greg Norman that were leading right into the final round, and then, it just didn't happen. So it's really anybody's tournament to win. It doesn't necessarily, the guy that comes out strong in the first couple of rounds isn't necessarily going to be the guy that's going to finish on Sunday.
Well, who would have picked Angel Cabrera to win two of them in the last couple of years or so? So, it just goes to show you that there's that many dominant players. And I think the era of, and I forgot who said it, back when Tiger was doing Tiger's thing, they pretty much said, we're playing for second place. But I think with that regime gone now, I think that there are so many of these young players and, again, guys like Jim Furyk just saying, you know what, I deserve winning this thing this year. As much as anybody, I've been out here long enough, or I'm a young kid, I'm fearless. I think this is going to be probably one of the greatest Masters you're going to see. And I agree with you. Why they lengthened that golf course, as you know, between the short game, where the pins are on some of those greens, it wasn't necessary to do that. I understand. I get why they did it, but I thought it kind of took a little bit of the aura away from how great that golf course was. Because as you know, Ted, I mean, they're putting a lot of short holes on the PGA Tour right now that they're trying to get these guys to drive the green. And, we all know that when we're 20, 30, 40, 50 yards away, that's a tough shot, especially if you're going to a short pin. So, So it's a shame that and hopefully they're not going to keep on taking it to 8,000 or whatever. I hope they kind of leave it alone and just let the guys play. The good pin placements, you got to love 15, 16, 17, 18 coming in with those pin placements the way they do.
Oh, I know that, and it's going to be an interesting and exciting Masters, and we'll wait to see whether or not Tiger is going to be around for that. Hopefully, he'll be in it, but I know he's got to get a little bit better than what he's been playing, and he's certainly got to be feeling at his best. Augusta's not an easy course for somebody that's nursing some injuries. So we'll see what happens here in a little over, 2 months' time. But well, Gary, again, I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening. Of course, my special guest is Gary Brooks, PGA teacher professional, and also the inventor of the straight arm. We talked about that a little bit tonight and had some great calls as well. And you can get your hot little hands on a straight arm by going to straightarm.net. And there's also some great videos there on how to use the product and some of the benefits as well that you can watch. Now you can watch because we're ending the show. I'm glad that you stuck around. And I want to give also a special thank you to the four gentlemen that called in. Alex, of course, a young lad out just starting his golf career, and we want to wish him much success. Jim out in Texas, appreciate you calling in and telling us about your experiences with the straight arm. And Chad, get out there and buy one, not only for yourself, but buy your wife one as well. I think she'll enjoy it, and both of you can go out and enjoy some great golf. And Lee, of course, another fellow professional golf teacher out there, thank you for calling in and sharing your kind words, not only for Gary, but for the program as well. And I hope you'll continue to keep tuning in and be looking for that email from Gary. And as I said, I would love to have you on the program as well. Gentlemen, thank you for calling in. Gary, thank you for joining me here tonight. And if you just hang tight, I'm going to close out the program, and and we will go enjoy. I want to thank, obviously, in addition to Gary and the callers, I want to thank all of you for my faithful listeners for tuning in worldwide to Golf Talk Live each week. It's where I have nothing but a great amount of pleasure interviewing some of the best coaches, teaching professionals, authors, and even some entrepreneurs that stop by the program from time to time. And it's through their participation and guest appearances that have helped make Golf Talk Live a first-class show. In addition, I want to thank some of the sponsors and supporters of the program, Mr. Jonathan Laird, owner and editor of South Coast Golf Guide. Make sure you get yourself a copy at southcoastgolfguide.com, and also Mrs. Meredith Kirk, who is the 2014 Mrs. South Carolina, and also owner of Meredith Kirk Golf. She's a professional as well in the golf business and took a little time off last year. She's going to be joining me next Thursday on the program. I believe it's next Thursday. She'll be coming on talking about her golf career and her time in the Mrs. South Carolina pageant, as well as her great work that she's doing with junior golf. Nikki and Tiffany Litherland for all of your help for spreading the word, and I believe, Nikki, you're over here now, so I'm going to get you on the program. Of course, another big supporter of the program, Mr. Sean Kelly, owner of LinkedGolfers.com. It runs one of the largest group on LinkedIn of golf groups, that's Linked Golfers, and has brought that out on the World Wide Web at LinkedGolfers.com, so make sure you check out that as well. And Mr. Bernie Pinder from Ontic Golf, a great line of customized putters, and Mr. Peter Doyle from Doyle Golf Solutions over in Ireland. Thank you for all your continued support. Thank you, Gary, once again for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live, and I will see all of you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Central right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody and have a great weekend. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Ted. That was very enjoyable. My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
All right. Well, have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds great.